Presidential poll is next Wednesday, but of course it comes at a time of severe economic pressure. Inflation in Zimbabwe is over 100%. There's also a clampdown on opposition campaigns through a new so-called Patriotic Act, which prevents public criticism of the government. 80-year-old President Emmerson Mnangagwa will be seeking a second presidential term. 45-year-old Nelson Chamisa, leader of the Citizens Coalition for Change, is of course his biggest rival. So what are the chances this will be free and fair? I'm joined now by Reverend Wilfred Dimingu from the Fellowship of Christian Councils in Southern Africa. And they've called on government to ensure polls are free and fair and reflect the will of the people of Zimbabwe. Reverend, thank you so much for your time. How free and fair has campaigning been in the run-up to next week's poll, in your view?
In my view, there are a lot of things that have been happening, but for comparing with the previous elections, we can say the period before the election this time around has been relatively peaceful, although we have witnessed some violence here and there, particularly the issue of Tinashe Chitsunge, who was stoned to death in Glenora and Harare. Which is really a sad development. But the challenge that we have seen this time around is that there have been so many court cases pertaining to the electoral processes, which is a bit worrisome. But otherwise, in terms of violence, this time around, we have not witnessed huge cases of violence. And the issues of free and fair elections, we, as the church in Zimbabwe, we have got our observers on the ground, and we are hoping that by the end of the electoral process on the 23rd, we'll be able to come up with a clear picture of what would have happened, and then we can issue a statement on with regards to whether the elections were free and fair. At this particular moment, we cannot really say, otherwise we would have preempted the process of observation that is going on.
Let's just go into some of those issues you mentioned that are of concern. You mentioned someone was stoned to death. I'm so sorry, we don't know about this. Could you please explain this? What happened?
Yeah, what happened is that the CCC supporters were going for a rally in one of the Harare suburbs, and there were clashes with members of other political parties, and one of the CCC activists was stoned to death during that process, but police have arrested some of the perpetrators of that violence, and we are still waiting to see what will happen after that. But we are just calling upon the police to make sure that justice is done, to send a lesson to all that we want to involve themselves in violence during this election period.
Yeah, that's really worrying. You know, I mean, in a free and fair democracy, everyone should be allowed to campaign freely. But the fact that such violence happened, was this at a rally for the Citizens Coalition for Change? Was it one of their rallies? Were they set upon by a group? Do you know any more?
Yes, in that they were actually going for a rally. Then there were these clashes with the members of allegedly ZANU-PF. So it was a sad development, but we are hoping, we are yet to hear what the courts are going to say and what the police are going to do. But we are happy that some of the perpetrators were arrested.
You mentioned also concern about some court cases. I wonder if you could just talk us through those.
Yes, this time around we have witnessed an unprecedented number of electoral court cases with regards to the electoral processes, from the delimitation process itself, the issues of the voters' roll, and the issues that came out of the nominations court, where some candidates could not file their names on time, and some who had filed their names, and members of the opposing parties were taking them to court that the proper procedure was not followed by ZEC, but quite a number. And the one for Sevia Kasukwere, who wanted to contest the election as a presidential candidate, and the issue was taken to court again, and his name was withdrawn. So all these cases were really worrisome because we would have expected a situation where things will go on without much cases in the courts, like we have witnessed this time around.
All right, so a presidential candidate was not allowed to contest. He's not going to be taking part next week. Talk to us about the role of observers, because observers are meant to be completely impartial and they are there just to watch how elections proceed. They're a vital part of being able to declare an election free and fair. We know that the AU will be there, SADC member countries will be there, your organisation as well. Talk me through what you do on a day.
As observers, particularly us as a church, we have been observing the electoral processes well before the pronouncement of the election date through our structures, and that have been giving us information of what has been happening on the ground. But we are hopeful that this time we are going to have a credible observation report from other members from other countries. This time around, European Union, they've been here for quite a long time now. Their long-term observers came well before the election time, and their short-term observers are coming in. But for us, our short-term observers will witness already. They are on the ground observing what is happening, and on the election day, they'll witness the opening of the polling stations and the preliminary process that is done before the actual election happens. And they'll be on the polling stations throughout the day, witnessing what will be happening, observing what will be happening until the time the polling stations closes, and they'll witness the counting of the ballot papers after the voting process to the time where the results will be sent to the command center from the various polling stations.
All right, well, best of luck for next Wednesday. Let's hope it goes well. And we do appreciate your time. Reverend Wilfred Dimingu from the Fellowship of Christian Councils in Southern Africa, ahead of Zimbabwe's poll.